Hi,
Hello,
this is Kim.
this is Andy.
We're going to read to you from the Urantia book. First, we have 365 Days of Walking the Red Road by Terry Jean.
Today we hear from
It's July 11th.
from a Cherokee adage. All my relations in creation. I negada quasti idaga dan. All my relations in creation.
That's Cherokee.
Cherokee adage.
Of course, in Lakota, it's Mitakiwe Oyesa.
All my relations. On this date in Native American history, the American Indian movement was founded in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Hey, we are home.
Yep. Okay. And then
The Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, translation by Derek Libb.
after settling a great dispute, there must be remaining resentments.
It doesn't matter how we say no hard feelings. After a bitter dispute, there's bound to be residual ill will. That's a fact of life.
How can this be considered good? Therefore, the sage holds the left part of the contract, but he does not demand payment from the other person.
Okay, right. That's kind of how I do my business. So it's like, yeah, okay, so you signed a contract, but I always say that the relationship I have with you is right now I've got this lady owes me $10, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
that I'll see, tomorrow. So, if you want to give me the $10, that's great. If not, I'll just whatever. My relationship with you is
Mhm.
more important than $10, right?
Mhm.
That's what I always say. Okay, so sages give without expecting anything in return. It is as if they hold the left part of the lending agreement, but do not demand payments from the borrower. The left part means the lender's copy. It refers to the ancient Chinese method of keeping track of debts, which existed even before the invention of paper. Lender and borrower would take a piece of wood or tree bark and carve a record of their transaction on it. Then they would split it down the middle. The left part would go to the lender, the right to the borrower. The left part was the lender's proof of his right to demand payments. When the loan was fully paid, the lender would give the left part to the borrower, thus making the contract whole. The restored contract then became the borrower's proof that he had fulfilled his obligations. Because the tear was uneven, it served as the perfect and natural way to authenticate the contract. A forged left side will never match the right side. A simple and brilliant solution.
Mhm.
Wow, those Chinese people, they had it going on. That's a really great idea,
Yep,
right?
it is.
Yeah.
Those who have virtue hold the contract. Those without virtue hold the collections.
Tax collectors take from everyone and give to no one. Unlike them, Tao cultivators hold the left half of the contract. This means that we give without expecting anything in return. When we do that, the Tao sees to it that we are amply rewarded despite the complete lack of expectations.
Hmm.
Okay, so here when I have this contract, it's okay, whenever you get around to it, I'm not worried about it,
Mhm.
and remember that you're more important to me than the $10 or
Mhm.
whatever the amount of money is.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm go about it that way. So whatever, and then that person will tell four other people, oh, that Kim, she's very generous with her,
Mhm.
and very reasonable in with her payments, when
Mhm.
in doing my business. So they're gonna tell other people. Hmm.
The heavenly Tao has no favorites. It constantly gives to the kind people.
Right. How can it be that generous souls prosper while misers are forever pinching pennies? Shouldn't those who take from others end up with more than those who give? So it's not real logical. It is not because the Tao always plays favorites. It is because the law of cause and effect ensures that those who give in accordance with the Tao will receive abundantly. So you don't always receive in terms exactly of what your contract says,
Mhm.
but you are blessed. That's the way of heaven, right?
Mhm.
Turn page. So I totally subscribe to that. So what it's even the Beatles said you should never take more than what you give or something like that, wasn't it?
I don't recall that one.
Or was it who said that? It's in some song, some poet or something. Okay, anyway, all right. So we got post-planetary prince man,
Paper 52.
52 part 2, post-planetary prince man.
You start.
With the arrival of the planetary prince, a new dispensation begins. Government appears on Earth, and the advanced tribal epoch is attained. Great social strides are made during a few thousand years of this regime. Under normal conditions, mortals attain a high state of civilization during this age. They do not struggle so long in barbarism as did the Urantia races. But life on an inhabited world is so changed by rebellion that you can have little or no idea of such a regime on a normal planet. Okay, again, we're so abnormal here. We're abnormal. Okay, you go. You go up just one paragraph. Okay, and then I'll
The
go.
average length of this dispensation is around 500,000 years, some longer, some shorter. During this era, the planet is established in the circuits of the system, and a full quota of seraphic and other celestial helpers is assigned to its administration. The thought adjusters come in increasing numbers, and the seraphic guardians amplify their regime of mortal supervision.
Okay. When the planetary prince arrives on a primitive world, the evolved religion of fear and ignorance prevails. The prince and his staff make the first revelations of higher truth and universe organization. These initial presentations of revealed religion are very simple, and they usually pertain to the affairs of the local system. Religion is wholly an evolutionary process prior to the arrival of the planetary prince. Subsequently, religion progresses by graduated revelation as well as by evolutionary growth. Each dispensation, each mortal epoch receives an enlarged presentation of spiritual truth and religious ethics. The evolution of the religious capacity of receptivity in the inhabitants of a world largely determines their rate of spiritual advancement and the extent of religious revelation. This dispensation witnesses a spiritual dawn, and the different races and their various tribes tend to develop specialized systems of religious and philosophic thought. They're uniformly they're uniformly run through all these racial religions two strains: the early fears of primitive men and the later revelations of the planetary prince. In some respects, Urantians do not seem to have wholly emerged from this stage of planetary evolution. So we still have these primitive holdovers,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
People are still subscribing to that dog eat dog mentality and like survival of the fittest, and
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
That social Darwinist philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
right? As you pursue this study, you will the more clearly discern how far your world departs from the average course of evolutionary progress and development. So I see that we're really, they must think, we're just this really exotic, strange, and really we are.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of what would make common sense, how far we're diverging from sensibility. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the planetary prince is not the prince of peace. Racial struggles and tribal wars continue over into this dispensation, but with diminishing frequency and severity. This is the great age of racial dispersion, and it culminates in a period of intense nationalism. So right,
Mm-hmm.
we're still like that.
Yep.
Color is the basis of tribal and national groupings, right? And the different races often develop separate languages. Each expanding group of mortals tends to seek isolation. Uh-huh. The segregation is favored by the existence of many languages. Before the unification of the several races, their relentless warfare sometimes results in the obliteration of whole peoples. The orange and green men are particularly subject to such extinction.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I always go, your mind always goes, well, then why make them in the first place? But just, that they were there and they left that genetic imprint
Mm-hmm.
on us, means that we have these potentials to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is important, right?
Right.
On average worlds, during the latter part of the prince's rule, national life begins to replace tribal organization, or rather to be superimposed upon the existing tribal groupings. But the great social achievement of the prince's epic is the emergence of family life. Heretofore, human relationships have been chiefly tribal. Now the home begins to materialize. So before that, they weren't really like, because everybody was just, on the move and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Okay, it's your turn. You go, you finish it. No, no, go to the end here, okay? All right, and then I'll go.
Am I here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is the dispensation of the realization of sex equality. On some planets, the male may rule the female. On others, the reverse prevails.
Hey.
During this age, normal worlds establish full equality of the sexes, this being preliminary to the fuller realization of the ideals of home life.
Right? Okay, so
This is
that's
the dawn of the golden age of the home. The idea of tribal rule gradually gives way to the dual concept of national life and family life. During this age, agriculture makes its appearance. The growth of the family idea incom- is incompatible with the roving and unsettled life of the hunter. Gradually, the practices of settled habitations and the cultivation of the soil become established. The domestication of animals and the development of home arts proceed apace. Upon reaching the apex of biological evolution, a high level of civilization has been attained, but there is little development of a mechanical order. Invention is the characteristic of the succeeding age.
mm-hmm.
The races are purified and brought up to a high state of physical perfection and intellectual strength before the end of this era. The early development of a normal world is greatly helped by the plan of promoting the increase of the higher types of mortals with proportionate curtailment of the lower, and it is the failure of your early peoples to thus discriminate between these types that accounts for the presence of so many defective and degenerate individuals
Wow.
among the present-day Urantia races.
Wasn't that crazy? Read
Mhm.
that again, right?
And it is the failure of your early peoples to thus discriminate between these types that accounts for the presence of so many defective and degenerate individuals among the present-day Urantia races. Mm. Yep.
So they actively, that's why it's necessary for them during this certain stage of evolution
Mhm.
to promote the well-being of the higher types,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And at the expense of the lower types. And there's so much warfare, and life was so brutal, so that naturally would kill off the genetic strains that
Mhm.
weren't able to adapt
Mhm.
to, yeah, and reproduce, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so there is kind of a natural selection process going on there, just like like in the Cry Wolf movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
The wolves were only feeding on the weakened, the sick deer,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of a
Right.
process. So we're emerging from, it's part of this emerging from this animal stage, but then that doesn't get, when we get more into the human, civilized stage of our development, then that doesn't happen, or that doesn't matter. But there is, this part, and this is why. So this wasn't done because of our failure of Adam and Eve and stuff, and because of failure of the planetary prince.
Mm-hmm.
That that thing that what we that what needed to happen was the drying up all those inferior strains, right? That
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen. So those people lived and procreated, and there now we've got,
Mm-hmm.
certain politicians that we won't name.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's amazing, right?
Right. I was going to say that from a Republican standpoint, that sentence makes perfect sense.
But they're wanting to apply that now in this current day,
Right.
instead of deal with who we are. But it's kind of like, it's true that the can has been kind of kicked down the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To
So
deal
here
with
we
this at some point. But here we are. So we have the one side saying that, well, everybody's equal. We're not going to give up anybody. Everybody's
the other side
equal,
saying
and
the
they're
presence
saying,
of so many defective and degenerate individuals among the present day.
right. But I mean, how do you qualify that? What is that? And what is your attitude toward that? And you don't just slay them. You know what I mean? We're at it. If we are going to claim this higher point of civilization
Mm-hmm.
rather than abject barbarism, we're going to have to find some way to assimilate them positively
Mm-hmm.
into culture, and in ways that they don't feel like taking charge of things. And that's what been the failure of the left,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not willing to, prioritize those. I don't think what
Right, Scott, are we finding some middle ground here?
are we fighting. I don't know how, man. So we can't prioritize people anymore because we're civilized. We can't go to say that this person is essentially more um, we worth something than these people. What we can say is their ideas are not as good, so they have to follow the superior ideas, the superior laws, right?
One of the great
But
achievements of
anyway,
the age of the
this
prince is this restriction of the multiplication of mentally defective and socially unfit individuals. Long before the times of the arrival of the second sons, the Adams, most worlds seriously addressed themselves to the task of race purification, something which the Urantia peoples have not even yet seriously undertaken.
see, so you see how this is so controversial.
Mm-hmm.
See, they have to address this stuff. You guys, Urantians, you know, I love the Urantia book, but this stuff, how do you get a grip on this? And if the angels, the people are so high above us, can stoop to loving us, who we're so defective, we just stoop a little bit to love our fellow humans, that while at the same time seeing that that they're probably not as fit to um, rule. And and this book talks about how you have to go through this huge qualification process just to be able to vote.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that, so we get people having more of a voice, and their voice is kind of metered. Your vote, your vote is kind of metered as to where how much weight it should have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is so hard, right?
It is hard.
It is hard. So there is truth on both sides of this argument.
Mm-hmm. We need a middle ground.
But where, how do you do that, right?
That is the
Because
question
this
of the
total like equality thing is not the truth. It's not the truth. But then you can't say that, oh, that's an excuse for your upper echelon people to abuse the lower people. And by what criteria do you do you do you grant people these this perception that the criteria that we had is the more money you make and the more beautiful you are, the more physically, the more worthy you are of social gifts and social standing. Well, that's dumb. And the more of course, the more guns you have, yeah, then that's important. So that's not how um, how we fulfill our how we gain social prominence.
Mhm.
We have to change those standards.
Mhm.
But we have to, I think Democrats especially have to face that, guys, I know we're not all equal. We're just not. And we were never supposed to be. But that doesn't mean that what we talk about, I hate the word inferior, that the people that are inferior, and I might be one of them. In some ways I am very inferior. I'm on the autism spectrum. That's not I'm convinced that's, especially studying left and right brain stuff, that's not a really very good way to be, and the stuff that I've had to overcome in order to adapt that. But anyway, that doesn't mean that people like on the autism spectrum are not very socially so valuable, because literally we can see things that neurotypical people literally don't see.
Mhm.
That would be blindsided. So you got the neurotypical people would be blindsided in a lot of ways without our input.
Mhm.
So we have to value that, but at the same time we have to understand that do we want an autistic person in the White House? Oh, probably not. We're susceptible to all kinds of tunnel vision and obsessions and limited kind of like um, things that other people aren't perspective. At the same time, we're very valuable in this way. So it's really interesting. I mean, yeah, how to see this in a real kind of way, and how to deal with it. So yeah, and Ian McGilchrist and Ken Wilbur have helped me understand this a lot. And I would refer you to them. But anyway, if we had any viewers, we would you know yeah. Okay, we're gonna finish this.
All right.
Okay, because we got to go. Right. This problem of race improvement is not such an extensive undertaking when it is attacked at this early date in human evolution. The preceding period of tribal struggles and rugged competition in race survival has weeded out most of the abnormal and defective strains. Okay, so it's more of a natural process if it happens when it's supposed to happen,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
An idiot. Oh God,
Mhm.
I hate it when they say an idiot does not have much chance of survival in a primitive and warring tribal social organization. So the right wing solution is just, well, let's go back to that situation, and then we'll weed out all the idiots that way.
Mhm.
But how kind? That's not kind at all. That's so.
Nobody ever accused Republicans of being kind.
Oh God. Yeah. Instead, yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. It is the false sentiment of your partially perfected civilizations that fosters, protects, and perpetuates the hopelessly defective strains of evolutionary human stocks. Totally right wing perspective.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
Right.
So there's this does support, there is some truth in that.
Mhm.
So that's why there's this split. This book is so controversial in this way.
Mhm.
To bridge that gap is just like this huge undertaking.
Right.
Right. But we're
That's-
not in primitive cave, tribal society. We are trying to make the claim to be civilized here.
Nor are we in the Old West.
We're not in the old west. So we have to,
Everything has changed,
everything has changed.
except the way we think.
So we're looking at, okay, so how do we recognize those individuals here that are maybe not, that we, oh God, that we don't want to reproduce? Max Adorno has stuff to say about that. And I've got his huge book on that, right? So these are huge ethical issues. They're so impacting. Where it's like I don't see that anytime soon we're going to be in a place to deal with these problems in a productive way. I'm just not seeing that.
It's yet to
So
be revealed.
I see them crashing and actually not by choice, by inevitability, kind of repeating some of this, those prior
Mhm.
age
Mhm.
problems to weed out some of that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but that's probably, but that's the level that we're looking to revert to once this crashes,
Mhm.
because I see civilizations built on clouds of nothing, and all these things. Yeah. Um, anyway, all right, that's pretty scary, but
Finish.
yeah. Okay. It is neither tenderness nor altruism to bestow futile sympathy upon degenerated human beings, unsalvageable, abnormal, and inferior mortals. That is so hard.
Mhm.
It's like I feel like I've just been slapped.
Could it be that it's okay to help them,
Well, right. This
but they
is,
shouldn't
yeah,
be
help them
breeding?
assimilate. They shouldn't be breeding. They shouldn't be making decisions on policy
Right.
in our society, which is what they're doing,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is QAnon and all this. So let's go break open save the children from the pizza parlor and whatnot and ruin that business forever. You know,
Mhm.
they shouldn't be doing that stuff. But we've got, yeah, and incarcerating people for things like possessing an ounce of marijuana or something like that, right?
Right.
How nuts is that? Where is the priority? Where is the so this is how we don't know how to do this.
Mhm.
How to categorize what's more serious and what has what impact,
Mhm.
and this is totally defunct. We're
Mhm.
totally not at the level to deal with these kind of questions.
Right.
That's why we're destined to revert back to some old shit.
Mm.
And it's going to be a sad story for the human race. We think we've come so far, but we've learned so little about what it was really necessary.
I should finish.
Okay, there exist on even the most normal of the evolutionary world sufficient differences between individuals and between numerous social groups to provide for the full exercise of all those noble traits of altruistic sentiment and unselfish mortal ministry without perpetuating the socially unfit and the morally degenerate strains of evolving humanity. What if you happen to be the mother of one of these ones that is labeled either justly or unjustly as somehow unfit,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So your child is scheduled, you get the letter in the mail, your child is scheduled for extermination on, the fuck. I mean, I could hardly bear that. You know what I mean? But this is what latitude creator gives us to make these decisions.
I think that society sometimes functions in that regard when it recognizes adult individuals with appropriate honors that you are now a fully functioning member of society and you have demonstrated the capability of fostering, of having children. Until you reach
Well,
that point, there shouldn't be.
Lakota society does that.
Right.
Lakota does that in a very functional way,
Mhm.
very very positive way. Our society, shoot, once you're 18, you're legal. You know,
For everything.
for everything. You can have a car, a gun, more, except for
That
drugs.
doesn't mean that
You know what I
doesn't
mean?
that you're
That you're
qualified to
to,
be
to to make decisions for other people or even for yourself.
passing on your own DNA.
Oh man, when I think about like certain people whose names start with certain certain people that I know who have fathered children, who I'm thinking of,
Mhm.
totally like
Mhm. Randomly.
yeah,
Mhm.
just like because everybody does it, might as well have that on my life experience schedule. I mean,
And that's part of the problem.
that's okay. There is abundant opportunity for the exercise of tolerance and the function of altruism in behalf of those
Mhm. Right. Right.
unfortunate and needy individuals who have not
Mhm.
irretrievably lost their mortal heritage,
Mhm.
their moral heritage, and forever destroyed their spiritual birthright.
So
Okay.
it's okay to help them.
Yeah, but that's in like discriminating between this is where we need, and this is I need help with because I've made very poor decisions in this, is helping let some random guy who asked me for you know starts out with $40, a couple dollars, $40, it goes up to 100, 600, 700, $800.
It's a degenerate person
Right. So how do you and they're out there walking around.
who should not be having
And
little
you can't
brewers.
tell. Yeah, you shouldn't be having, it shouldn't be doing that. But because we this planetary prince generation and the Adamic generation people failed us, okay,
Mhm.
they're out there.
Leaving us with a mess to figure out. And
How
we're struggling with it. Mhm.
so how to deal with this? This is something that and but the left will pretend it doesn't exist. This is not really a problem,
Mhm.
but it is a real problem. But
Mhm.
the right solution is just not it's not kind, it's not humane, it's yeah.
Right.
So that's a fascinating um, question,
Mhm.
and one that I don't think is likely to be addressed in our
In our
lifetimes.
lifetime, probably not. Then again, it might be addressed as part of a bigger problem.
No, that is the big problem. What's the bigger problem? Carbon crisis?
The reduction in population that's probably ahead because of the end of the fossil fuel age.
Well, that'd be true, but that will take a share of the population that's just even across the board. I mean, a lot of these diseases and these problems here don't discriminate between, oh, are you socially capable, are you socially defunct? Like natural predators, it's beautiful in this way how like the wolves discriminate against the one who's who's less physically able and who's maybe less socially competent to follow the norms of the group that
Right.
gets kind of like off on its own, in that group. So in a way, then the wolf is strengthening the herd,
Mhm.
and the herd degenerates, and because of the absence of the wolves.
Mhm. Right.
Okay, so that's kind of how it's supposed to work, but we've totally upturned that kind of a natural order, natural system, and we're trying to say here that the neoliberalism is about letting the market work its own self, and the people who have the most cunning and fewest morals in that sense. If you're willing to screw your neighbor out of a dime, then you'll naturally rise to the top. So those are the most desirable characteristics of a social leader. Well, now we're seeing the consequences of that.
Mhm.
That's not the most desirable social leader.
Right.
Okay, so how do we communicate this and even articulate what this means to the generations here that come after us? Are they going to be able to learn anything from this experience when we're all huddled in, you know, trash can fires and trying to make sense of how the circuitry of the building worked and how these are like 100 years ago people lived in these things. How was that able to you know what I mean? Well, I really think we'll be reduced to that kind of stuff.
We don't have a lot of time left to figure it out.
I know. And you're a lot more optimistic than I am about these things. Um, but that's
I
you know
believe that this is a part of our evolutionary progress, and that whether we agree with the process or not, it will work out.
I want to have grandchildren though. I want to have grandchildren. But you know what I imagine when I have people think, oh, like maybe like your son doesn't want to have children because they have to face all this stuff. I see my grandchildren as like these epic heroes who are going to overcome, and like they're going to be able to say, well, my grandma thought about this problem a lot, and this is what she had to say about it, and they're going to read off what I wrote in front of this council meeting, and all these Native American people are going to be, oh yeah, powerful. You know what I mean? And then they're going to start a new civilization based on, now I'm really going off. I'm really actually a crazy person.
We do need to
We
go
knew
off.
we need to go. And but anyway, I hope I haven't made a bad impression, and I love everybody, and I try my best to okay, right. Okay. Thank you.
Great Monday. Bye.
So that is some